Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. You're in for an epic treat today. I've got our guest in live with us in studio in St. Louis, and you're going to know what her story is all about and why it matters so much to you in a moment. So get ready for that. Here it comes. As a seasoned human resource expert with more than 30 years of experience, April Simpkins is a powerhouse in the realm of mental health advocacy. With relentless determination, she has tirelessly championed the cause, and yet the cause became even more real to her when it went from being something about the organization to something about her own individual journey as a mother. You see, she became an even more visible advocate following the passing of her beloved daughter, Miss USA 2019, Cheslie Kryst, who battled depression for many years. Today, April joins us to share her professional journey. That's part of this. Her unexpected path to pageantry herself, and ultimately becoming a mother of six. Equally important, and really the reason why she's in the office with me right now, she shares about the accomplishments of her late, beautiful daughter, Cheslie, the struggle she silently faced, and how she continues to keep her legacy alive. My friends, this month, September, is National Suicide Awareness Prevention Month, and I hope today's conversation will provide hope and guidance for you to continue forward boldly in your journey. You will laugh, you will cry, you will certainly feel during this conversation, and you will be convicted to not only recognize the beauty in the reflection in your mirror, but also the beauty and the struggle in the reflections in the faces of others. So let me loop her into the conversation right now. She's staring at me. We might as well have her in the conversation. Her name is April Simpkins. April, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Thank you for having me.
So let's tell our listeners, because most of them are listening, not watching, where are we recording this conversation?
We are in St. Louis in your incredible studio here, which has artwork that is absolutely inspiring.
What are you doing in St. Louis?
I was speaking at a conference, a SHRM conference, and talking to HR folks and leaders about how to infuse mental wellness into their workplace cultures.
When you bump into someone in St. Louis's airport later on this afternoon or back home tonight, and they say, "Hey, April, what do you do for a living now?" How do you respond to that?
By profession, I'm in human resources, and by calling, I'm a mental health advocate.
We're going to hear about both of those stories and your heart for both today. And as
Yes.
people step into your story, they're going to laugh,
Yes.
they're going to cry, and they're going to fight forward for the things that matter. So I'm so grateful that you're making time in my backyard to focus on the people who are tuning into your story.
Thank you.
You matter, it matters, so let's roll. Rather than focusing on HR or mental wellness, let's go back a little bit farther. Talk about your life growing up.
My life growing up took so many twists and turns, honestly. And I think it's the depth and breadth of the experiences I had that made me the person I am today. I was raised by a single mom. My father left our home when I was quite young. And we had a very middle-class life when we lived in New York. And then we moved south, and our lives looked extremely different. My mom did not have the same kind of job that she had when we lived in New York. And so we lived below the poverty line. And I spent a lot of time isolated out of shame and isolated because I just didn't feel like I fit in. But I loved music. And some neighbors donated a piano to me, and my piano became my best friend. I went on to become a classically trained pianist. By the time I made it into college, I received a full scholarship from the music department and then went into a career. I never thought I wanted children. I thought I was too selfish. And then I had my first daughter, and I felt like I discovered myself. I knew that being a mom was everything for me, hence why I have 6 children. I became an entrepreneur. Not many people in my family were, but that was a dream of mine, and taught my children entrepreneurship, and have been with my incredible husband now for 20 years, just about, and built a beautiful life. I think we built a beautiful life.
You built beautiful children. I've
Thank
seen the
you.
family photos, and you raise incredible kids, and they're beautiful kids.
Thank you.
Inside and out. They just shine joy.
Thank you.
But that doesn't mean there's not sorrow.
That's right.
And I think that's a misnomer sometimes as we're dancing down the catwalk in life, that just because we have the look doesn't mean we always feel like that.
That is absolutely true.
What drew you into HR?
When I was in college, I mentioned I was a music major, but I did not want a career in music. I wanted something different. So I actually double majored in music and accounting. Many times in small businesses, the person who is managing accounting or bookkeeping also wears the hat of HR.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing, and HR just stuck with me. And so I moved out of accounting and focused on human resources. And now it's been more than 30 years that I've been in HR.
And, accounting obviously is relatively important for a business
Yes.
to measure top line and bottom line.
Yes.
But the soul of the organization lives in HR.
Yes.
What do you think it is about the soul that drew you in? So instead of tracking black versus red in the accounting side, you said, no, I want to track human life. What do you think it is about human resources that drew you into it?
There was something natural about problem solving for me. I wanted to figure it out, get to the core of an issue. And with HR in the seat where I sat, that was my job, was to figure out why we're having turnover in this department, or to figure out why the folks on this team aren't as engaged.
Yeah.
And so being able to peel back the layers of people and get to the core of the issue and solve it drew me right in. Still does to this day.
Many people who get eventually into pageants start when they're 1 year old. It's not even their choice. Someone puts a diaper on them, then a dress on
Yes.
them, and then they're out the door, and
Yes.
here it goes. You started a little bit later in life.
I did.
So tell me that story.
I'll tell you something funny. I was a tomboy growing up, through and through, which is why I was an athlete and am still an athlete. I'm going to run a New York Marathon in a couple of months. I actually entered my very first pageant because the prize package seemed pretty neat. And I thought, well, I could do this. I did everything wrong. I'm not kidding. I didn't know about pageant gowns, or I knew nothing, but I brought my authentic self. And to my surprise, I won. I entered my second pageant. And of course, both of these pageants I entered when I was older in life and was married and had children. And by the time I entered the second pageant, my children were able to come along with me and cheer me on. And I knew a little bit more of what to expect. And so, no, it was not something that I'd done early in life, but something I was not afraid to try.
Mrs. North Carolina.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
What is it like when you hear your name called?
Oh, my goodness.
And even before that, because you've said before in other conversations, including in your book, that it really isn't about like the outward beauty. That's not what drew you into pageant or your daughter. It's so much more. So like for you, what was the more that drew you in?
Honestly, it was twofold. Primarily, it was that the pageant, that crown does give you a megaphone and allows you to talk about something that you're passionate about. Secondly, and probably a little more selfishly, I was an entrepreneur, so it opened doors and allowed me to meet other people who would say, do you have a day job? And I would say, yes, I do, by the way. I have a day job, and talk to them about it. But my platform, which typically pageants will require the contestant to have a platform, was simply encouraging parents to be more involved in their kids' school. And I would share my own personal story, that I was an entrepreneur, a wife, I had children, so many other things, but I made the time to be involved with my children and their education.
You have 6 children.
Yes.
I have 4. Got me beat. And if you made me pick which one is my favorite, we could turn the thing off and come back on in a moment. But when you look at a child, when you're looking at that child, you see your favorite.
Yes.
And then when you look to your left, you see your favorite.
Yes.
And then as you look over to the right, oh, there's your favorite.
Absolutely.
But we're just going to focus primarily on one of your favorites today.
Yes.
I think you know who it is.
Yeah.
Just talk about her as a child.
She was incredible as a child. And honestly, from a very young age, I knew there was something special about her. She was the one who, and some parents may be able to relate to this, she could say the alphabet at a very young age. And when you talked with her, it wasn't just that she heard you, but she was really absorbing what you were saying. She was very quiet. Her older sister would speak for her. So there were many times Cheslie would say something and we almost couldn't make out what she was saying because she was too young, and her older sister would just chime in. She said she doesn't like the corn. And so Cheslie, ironically, as brilliant as she was, almost failed kindergarten because she just didn't engage. She didn't talk. She always had someone to talk for her. But that faded very quickly. Her level of intellect was literally off the charts. She was a brilliant person who was always curious, but always humble. And I know that is something that drew people to her, because not only could she talk to you about law, court cases, she could talk about fashion and singing and music, and she can talk about entertainers. Yeah. And she was an avid reader who spoke multiple languages. And so she had this way about her of absorbing information and using it to serve and support and help others. And I love that about her. She loved music as much as I did. She had dear friends. She had a lot of people who knew her, but her friend circle was very small and very solid. And I love that about her as well. She didn't need the accolade of people,
yes,
but she desired the closeness of her true friends.
You used a word in describing this beautiful woman that I heard a lot of her friends used to describe her too. It's the word service. And some of them use words like other-oriented, putting someone else first, always second. Like what they're hovering around is she loved the one and lifted up the one in front of her. So give us a story about your baby girl just loving other people.
Yes. Little known story. So Cheslie, when she went to grad school, she went to Wake Forest, and she got her MBA and her Juris Doctor at the same time, which was just a feat, which was a feat. And so you can imagine she spent a lot of time studying, and she was also trying to get into pageantry. But our family is very close. And so the one thing you don't want to do is miss our family outings when we're able to get everybody's calendar aligned. But there was this one time when she said that she was not going to be able to make it down to the family outing. And, you know, we all gasped, what do you mean?
Yes.
And she said that there were some girls she was mentoring who were high risk of not graduating at their high school. And one of her mentees was going to graduate high school. And she was so proud of her. So she skipped our family gathering to go to the graduation of this young lady that she had worked with. To know that Cheslie, in addition to all the studying she was doing, grueling schedule, still found time to help someone who was at risk of not graduating high school is just a testament to who she was. She didn't brag about it. She didn't write books about it. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't post it on social media. I didn't even know until she said, I can't make that outing. But that was truly who she was.
I mean, I wrote down like 11 names of describing this daughter of yours.
Yes.
Every one of them is flattering. And every one of them is like better than the next one. She was extraordinarily athletic.
Yes.
And I know people are like, you should see my son. He's very athletic. And, you know, he made the JV team. It's nice, but your daughter was very athletic. Just give us one example of that.
Incredibly so. And so she ran track when she was in high school, actually middle school into high school, and then joined the track team when she made it into college. But she was a heptathlete. So she had to do many events, from the high jump to the hurdles to the long jump, the triple jump. She was throwing the shot put. Like, there's so many different events that she had to not only learn, but master enough to represent a D1 track team. She was incredible.
Another term is vibrantly alive. I kept hearing that from some of her friends.
Yes.
A woman vibrantly alive. Tell me what that means when you think back on a story of your girl. Tell us about how she was vibrantly alive.
Cheslie was one of those people who, it's almost like her energy entered the room before she did. I often think about my children and how they enter the house. And, some of them enter quietly, almost don't know that they're here. But when Cheslie came in the door and she would shout, "Hi, Mama," like everything came to life. It's like when you watch those Christmas programs and they turn the lights on and you just feel this energy. That was Cheslie. Anytime she entered a room, she just had an energy about her.
And of course, a word that is oftentimes attached to your girls is beautiful. It's so obvious, but can you share an example of how beautiful this young woman remains?
Goodness. I'll tell you something funny as an inside joke for our family. Cheslie, and I think she mentions it in the book too, when she was very, very young, she had a unibrow. And she took some heat from unkind middle schoolers about her unibrow. But I think it humbled her a lot. And it did not matter how many times you told her or looked at her pictures and just, she's stunning. I think in her mind, she was still that girl with the unibrow. And it kept her so humble. I think what people loved and embraced about her was that level of humility. Like, she never made anyone feel like they were not important or less than. As a matter of fact, people who talked with her felt like they were her best friend because she was so engaging.
Engaging enough to eventually put herself in front of others, to be judged, but also to elevate them.
Yes.
Did you encourage her to get involved with pageants?
I did not.
What led to it?
She said that she saw me compete, and she did when I was crowned Mrs. North Carolina, U.S., and that it gave me an opportunity to be heard. And so initially for her, that's what she sought. And so she started, of course, with her high school in Miss Fort Mill. And there wasn't a lot attached to that other than accolades from your classmates. Cheslie looked into the Miss America system because they are one of the largest scholarship contributors. And for her being in law school and getting her MBA, she could use the scholarship money. And so she began to investigate. And honestly, that's kind of what tipped her into looking at that particular pageant system until she aged out.
What happens with that pageant and her? Because some of our listeners and viewers may not know the full story. What became of that pageant?
Cheslie competed in the Miss America system, and this is going to leave some people slack-jawed, but she aged out of that system at 26 years old. And she was encouraged by a number of people to continue competing because she really brought something incredible to the stage. And so she did. She went on to compete in the Miss USA system, and it took her a couple of tries, and then she won the title of Miss North Carolina, USA. And went on to take the stage at the 2019 pageant and became Miss USA 2019.
As a mother, ignoring pageantry and everything else, you're a mom.
Yeah.
What is it like watching your baby girl walk out there and answer the way she did when the judges are grilling her and play the piano the way she did and walk the way she did? What is that pride? What's that moment like?
Unbelievable. And I'll take you to Reno where she was crowned Miss USA. And my husband and I are in the audience, and we're both thinking the same thing because the caliber of women who are there competing is from a Harvard double grad. You had other women who were in law school, entrepreneur. I mean, very impressive group of women. And so we're thinking the same thing. If she could at least make top 15, that'd be great. She'd have an opportunity to be on the stage by herself. Wonderful. And so she made, top 15. And then, it kept going on 10, and then it gets to 5, and they're going to now do onstage questions. Well, my husband and I knew that as an attorney, that if she got the right question, she would nail the delivery. And so certainly she got a question, and she responded, and, we're side-eyeing each other like, that was really good. That was impressive. And then it gets to the top three. And, they ask her a question and she just blew it away. And that was the moment when my husband and I thought she could actually win this. Now, I'll tell you something interesting. They line the family up according to the name of your state. And that allows the cameraman to know where the family is when they have these magical moments. So we are sitting next to, New York, New Mexico is there, New York is beside us. It's hard. You want to cheer for your kid, but you don't want to make others feel uncomfortable. We didn't care. When it got down to the final two and they called her name, I didn't know what to do with myself. They don't have any instructions for parents. Hey, if your kid wins, here's what you do next. So we didn't know what to do, but we were so excited. But we knew in that moment when she answered that question, just brilliant. She was just absolutely brilliant.
You have a quote that I've heard you share repeatedly on podcasts. You wrote it in your book. What you see on the outside doesn't always match what's going on on the inside.
That's right.
This woman is quite literally on top of the world. And.
Yes.
Talk about the and.
She was battling a mental illness. And, I learned that Cheslie was battling a mental illness when she was in law school. And I got that call. She was in the hospital. And I didn't know why or what was going on. And so I got to the hospital and now, I'm talking to the physicians, I'm talking to psychiatrists about what is going on with my daughter. And that was the first time I heard persistent depressive disorder, dysthymia. And, they're explaining to me that my daughter is managing a state of low-grade depression all the time. And, at that moment, I'm going backwards in my head and I'm thinking, did I know this? Did I see this? What did I miss? I tell people all the time, Cheslie and I could talk about anything, and we did, except the state of her mental health. Because when I'd ask her how she was doing, she was always fine. There was one time when I noticed something seemed a little off, and I asked her what was going on, and she dismissed it with how much studying she had been doing, and that's why she didn't see herself. After she was released from the hospital and we developed a plan and I learned how to support her, we grew very close and I could see it. I wanted to be a safe space for her, even though I was her mom and many things she would say, like any parent, would leave me worried. Like, do I need to come to New York this second? But it was more important that I create a safe space where she felt okay saying, I'm not okay right now, Mom, than to make her feel like she has to put on a mask so that I'm okay. I had to learn the difference.
How did you parent differently once you found out that she was constantly dealing with this depressive mindset? You're not there to cheer them up.
Yeah.
It's icing on top of something that doesn't have sweetness.
Right.
So how do you love them forward, but at the same time love them what they are?
I use this analogy many times. If you see someone walking a journey in the rain, no umbrella, just walking in the rain, you can stand on your porch and tell them to come in out of the rain, but they have a journey that they're on. What they need is for you to get your umbrella and walk beside them on that journey. And that is what I had to learn to do as a parent. I had to learn not to try to fix, cheer, coach. I'm not her counselor. I need to learn how to sit there in that space with her when she's not okay, until she gets to that place, that resource, that whatever next step is to continue her journey of survival, of meeting the next person and having them hold the umbrella for her. That is hard to do as a parent because my instinct is to hold her or to cuddle her or to want to be there until she's okay. But that's not fair to someone who is battling a mental illness. I am just there to support.
I have several dear friends who've lost children to
Mm.
suicide. And when I think about their pain, I somewhere between numb and anger and just distraught. Like the very thought of what that's like. And knowing around that table, there's always that one spot. And knowing on that one little rack where they used to hang their jacket, there's always that one
Yes.
missing coat. And it's not the big thing. It's not the Christmas. It's like the little things that you took for granted until you can no longer say those words to that one. So I'm just going to walk you through this and be next to you as you do it. January 30th, 2022. Your life, your world is going to be changed forever. What happened?
I went to my exercise class. My life was so routine, which is one of the things that I share often. My life was just so routine, and I got out of my class, and it was always routine for me to call Cheslie on my way home, and we chit-chat a little bit. And I remember going to look at my phone to call her, and I could see that there was a text message from her. And I opened up my text messages, and I was at a light, and I thought it would be a quick message. Cheslie was a news correspondent on Extra. So I thought maybe she was going to send me a text to say, I can't talk this morning. I got an early call or something to that effect. And the first part of her text message said, by the time you get this, I won't be alive anymore. And it took like I couldn't figure what I was reading. And I remember turning off of the road, and I was kind of on the side of the road. And I looked at the text again, and she said, I know this will hurt you the most. And when I went to look at the text, it was very long. And that's when I knew this is not good. This is not, she's having an emotional moment and I need to call her. But I did. I called her number and it went to her voicemail. And I remember calling my husband, and I couldn't get the words out. I was just screaming. And so now he's panicking. And I'm telling him to call the police. And when I got home, there's so many things I tell people. It almost comes in these snapshots of trying to recall that day. The body is beautiful sometimes when it comes to trauma, and you won't remember everything. But I do remember my husband trying to call the police, and my boys, my two younger boys, coming downstairs because they heard all of the screaming. And they don't know what to do. I don't have the capacity to comfort them. There's always an instinct that I have to comfort my children first and try to tell them I'm okay. But I knew I was not okay. Yes. My husband got through to the police and we talked with them. But they did not tell us at that time that Cheslie had passed. And so when they said medics were on site, and there had been some time that had passed, I thought, okay, they're working on her. I need to get to New York. That was the first thing that came to my mind. I need to be there with her. So I ran to my office and I just booked 2 tickets. And I remember going back to my bedroom, and my son said, are you going? And I said, yes. And he just threw stuff in my suitcase, which, I look back now and laugh at it because I didn't even open the suitcase, John, until I made it to New York. And I mean, there was a book, a boot, a shirt I hadn't worn, no pajamas. But so, we got in the car and we're both kind of talking through what we need to do. And I said, we just need to find out what hospital they've taken her to. And I need to know if she needs things right. We're just going through this mental checklist. And we made it through the airport and got on the plane. And, the flight attendant was going through the usual checklist of put your phones on airplane mode. And I wouldn't, because I thought, they may call back to tell us where she is or what's going on. And the police officer said that, he apologized and said, your daughter is no longer with us. And my whole body just went numb. I cannot even explain that feeling. And my husband, just began to sob. And so when we landed in New York, it just seemed unreal. Like, we literally did not know what to do. What do we do now? What do we do next?
That's my question. So what do you do next when you get this call, when you get a text message from your baby? By the time you get this, mom,
Yep.
and then you get a police officer that verifies that what she texted you is accurate, and now you're in New York, and now you got one boot in that bag and the sweatshirt that you've
Yes.
never worn, like your life is upside down.
Yes.
What do you do next?
Here's what made that situation unbearable. The police did not tell me how my daughter died. They didn't, that was it. He made that one statement and that was it. And so my husband and I remember trying to think who we need to call. We obviously needed to call our kids back home and talk with them. The medical examiner called, and I handed my husband the phone. I was in no capacity to talk to anyone, and I heard, the word falling, and everything changed in that moment. Our phones had blown up because people knew that she was gone. And we got to the hotel, and we were inconsolable, but we knew there were people we needed to contact because they would think this wasn't true. This couldn't possibly be true. It was devastating. And even after that, we did not know what to do. There literally is no book, no document, no checklist. Here's what you do if your child suddenly dies. Here's your next step. Here's who you call. So one of the phone calls went to my best friend. And she and her husband and another friend of ours came to New York, and honestly, really kind of took over. And that was what we needed.
I was going to ask you about that. What did people do for you that our listeners may not even recognize? Why that might make a difference for someone else who's grieving the loss of a child or a spouse or something near and dear to them? What were things that people did for you, maybe in the early days or even in months and years that have followed, that were meaningful for you?
Honestly, the unfortunate part is there were so many people who wanted to do something, and they would ask me, and I didn't know. But what was beautiful is that my best friend pretty much stayed there at our house. I mean, she would leave late, she'd come early, and she could see what needed to be done. And she became the point person. So things would just appear. Food, gifts, things would just be taken care of. I think her intervention made this easier because it was hard when people would look at me with eyes of sorrow, wanting to help me, and I don't know what to tell them. I have no words. I'm trying to figure out how to get up out of the bed each morning. But I'll tell you something interesting that did happen. After Cheslie passed, people would send me cards, obviously. But after the flood of cards was done, I would get these letters from a woman in Florida. Her name is Ashley. Her last name is S. I don't know her. But she would, like clockwork, send me these letters of support. She would send me a card. I would get care packages from Ashley, and I had no way to thank her. So I started referring to her as my earth angel. And I would get like edible arrangements. And this one particular day, I remember I was going to do a television interview, and it was a day, grief is unpredictable, and I was grieving. And Ashley sent me a letter that was so motivational, telling me to keep going. And it was everything I needed. The anniversary of Cheslie's passing, which was 2023, January 30th, in December, Ashley sent me a box of cards with a card for each day in January that I could open and read, and it was motivating. To this day, I still get gifts from Ashley. I have no idea who this woman is.
You don't know who Ashley S.
I
is?
have no idea. And I thought to myself, this is what people need. It's just the word of motivation and encouragement. Don't stop sending that.
Oh gosh, I mean, we could spend the rest of our time on Ashley S. It's one of the most unheralded heroic stories I'm aware of.
I have all of her cards. I keep them in a box. I read them. I reread them. This past January, I went back and read each one of the cards for each day of the month. She honestly is a godsend. Her compassion.
Intentionality. Most of us think about people who've experienced loss. And if we're really bold, we'll do hashtag thoughts and prayers. And that's that. We've checked that box. Now we move on in our life to think of someone, to write them something, to pack a little package for them, to send it off through the postal system, and then to do it again and again and again. And then to think what she did in December to prepare you for January,
Yes.
which was preparing you for the epic reminder of all you lost.
Yes.
Thank God for Ashley S. One of the things I thought she was preparing you for is a couple of months after the loss of your daughter, I saw you on CBS. And it was 2 months, which is another way of saying minutes after your daughter's death. 2 months is not enough time. You are on national television, seemingly so put together. Champion her life and her legacy and mental health. But I don't know how you did it. So I'm curious, how did you do that? And what do you want to say to folks that would not be able to do that a couple months after a loss?
Let me explain that by going back just a little bit. I mentioned that Cheslie had a first attempt when she was in law school. And mental illness, especially knowing how much Cheslie was battling, and it left me feeling like I need to make the most of every single day. As a matter of fact, that moment when she was in the hospital, I prayed like every parent would, God, if you let her live, because her body was still not okay. Not only was her mental health challenged when she was in the hospital, but so was her body. And, you know, I would make the most of every single day. So I did. Made the most of every single day. You know, it's not unlike someone getting a cancer diagnosis and finding out they have stage 4 cancer. You are going to make the most of every single day you have with them. And that's what I did. And so going on to talk with Gail and Nate at CBS was extremely difficult. I don't know if I would have pushed myself to do that had things not unfolded the way that they did. But one challenge I faced is that my daughter was a public figure. And immediately following her death, there were questions and conspiracy theories. And I don't think the general public understands when you do that with someone and the whole family is grieving, you are ripping the scab off of a wound every time you do that. So, you know, my husband and I made the decision that we would eventually step forward, if for no other reason than to quiet some of that so that we could grieve and not be flooded with conspiracy theories. I knew how much Nate loved Cheslie. They were coworkers at Extra for quite some time.
He spoke specifically about her as a person who looks up and loves someone, speaks about a friend.
Yes.
I mean, he clearly looked up to and loved her.
Yes. And Gail, many people may not be aware, was Cheslie's mentor. So she and Cheslie had a special relationship. So to sit there with Gail and Nate, people who I know loved my baby and were missing her and hurting, I wanted to share with them words of encouragement. I don't know that it takes away from how I feel. When I step out there on those programs to talk, I feel like I am empowered by Cheslie and a woman on a mission to speak on behalf of those who are suffering. They need a voice. I want to see a day when someone, a public figure, can just say, I'm not okay. And people don't come attacking them with how their lives should be great because they have, because you are who you are and money is flowing everywhere. How could you be depressed? I want to get to a day when someone is able to step forward and say, I have a mental illness, and we all understand what that means and how to support them. And if that means putting myself second in those moments so that I can deliver a message speaking on their behalf, then that's what I'm going to do.
when did you decide to publish your daughter's life story? She'd written, the majority of it
Yes.
wasn't to the finish line, and it seemed like an abrupt ending. Now you have this.
Yes.
Tell me about that process.
I watched her write that book, parts of it, when we'd spent time together and we would talk about it. We'd gone out to Turks and Caicos for a workation. I mean, really.
We forgot our laptop.
Right.
But we got it.
I pulled out my laptop for show, but she was really typing away sitting there on the beach. But she was so proud of it. And I had not read her manuscript. She had finished it, I believe, January before she passed. She had finally finished her manuscript. She did not write the book with her passing in mind. She wrote about a distinct period in her life. And in her final wishes, she asked me to see that this book be published. And how could I not? You know, it's a chance for me to still be mom to my child and do something for my child. And it was very difficult. We tried to get the book published as it was, and the feedback we got, I took it all to heart and would make whatever changes or adjustments. But one of the best pieces of feedback we got was, this story ends, you know, she ends kind of a high note, take on the world, but how did we get here? And so that was my charge, is to shed some light on how we got here. There was a woman behind that face, that smile that people saw, who was struggling every single day. And that's the part that needed to be told.
I'm going to share a couple quotes. Some of them are borrowed from conversations you've had. Others are borrowed specifically from the book. One of the quotes I love, because you should celebrate this. Here it is. The victory she had by fighting every single day, she was here, remains something worthy of celebrating. She died at 30. And some people would view that as a loss, like she lost. And in that quote, I hear you saying, yeah, but there's something else you need to celebrate. So tell me about what you're saying in those words.
She had 30 amazing years of life on this side of heaven, and that should be celebrated. Cheslie was not her mental illness. She learned to live with it, but she never isolated to the point that she could not give whatever she had to others.
Right.
I could fill an encyclopedia with all of the incredible things that she's done, right down to spending part of her time as an attorney fighting to reduce the life sentences and excessive sentences of people with low-level drug crimes. She gave in so many ways. There was a prison that had a graduation program for the inmates who had completed a program, and they were now going to be released from prison and going on to their next step. And there she was. You know, it's not posted anywhere, the picture of her standing there giving words of encouragement to these men, giving them back their dignity as they walk back into life. That's who she, the number of things that she did in 30 years, it is worth celebrating.
On Saturday last weekend, my wife and I saw a Broadway show called Hamilton, which is a brilliant show. And there's a song about 84% of the way through performance that just brings me to tears, but in particular, knowing that I would be sitting across from you in 2 days. Just aches me to imagine the pain of losing a child. Which brings this quote to bear, I think. So there's a fear. In the way you begin it, there's a fear we have as parents that the last thing in the world we want is to lose our children. You cannot allow the fear of losing them to stop you from loving them every single day.
That's right. I really felt like I needed to say that to so many parents who have expressed to me how scared, gripped with fear, because they have a child who is battling with their mental health or bullies at school, or they're just so afraid. And the last thing you would want is to look back on all the special moments you missed and all the opportunities to connect that won't come back because you were gripped with fear, because you parented them through fear. I hear parents say to, well, many parents have said to me, I think about your pain and I could never. And I said that. As a matter of fact, before Cheslie passed, there were one person close to me, one that Cheslie knew, who had died by suicide. And she and I had a very deep conversation about losing a child. And I explained to her how much my heart ached for those mothers. And she told me how, not only how much she loved me, but how strong I am. And I really believe in my heart that she was letting me know that I would survive and I would heal. And in that moment, honestly, when I looked back and remember all of the things she said in that conversation, it reminded me that I did love her intensely and I did not parent through the fear. And she felt the love. And I say that to any parent. We don't know what's going to happen. None of us is promised tomorrow. Love those children. Have those moments. Have the talk. You cannot parent from fear. You have to parent from love.
Not only do you have to parent from love, you have to love others from love.
Yes.
So it leads us to this final quote, and then we'll move into the Live Inspired 7, and then we'll let you fly back home. So here we go. Strive to be a supporter, not a savior.
And, we as parents, I want to say, and even as close friends, we have that fix-it mentality. I'll take care of it. I will fix it. This isn't about fixing. This is about supporting. I can be very tired, John. And if you stand straight and allow me to just lean on you and rest, that is support. You trying to pick me up and carry me becomes difficult for me and hard on you. And eventually you're going to have to put me down. And then what? Being a supporter is sitting with someone, being with them in those moments so they know that they can have that time when they're not okay and helping them to move through it. That is being supportive, whether that's resources or getting them to a counselor. Trying to be a savior is not your role. You are not there to save them. For me, there is only one who can save them, and I'm not here to do his job. But what I can do is sit with you and be with you and help you through those difficult times. That is a difference between being a supporter and a savior.
So my friends, as you're listening to us begin moving toward the finish line of this conversation, you now know why I was so stinking excited about having my friend April join us live in my house today to celebrate her life and their impact and the truth that life is very rarely easy for any of us, but it is good, the foundation firm, and the best is yet to come. So April, we have 7 questions around here that we wrap every podcast with. They're called the Live Inspired 7. Something you do very well, but here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
In?
I'm ready.
All right. My fellow supporter, what's been the best, most impactful book you've ever read?
When Breath Becomes Air. That to me was one of the most moving books. It's about a physician and he is dying of brain cancer. And that, of course, is his area of specialty. And he is so raw and open and real. And I think it was the first time that I read a book where someone was just telling you, life isn't perfect. It's not beautiful. It's, this is hard. And then to know that he passed and his wife finished the book, the love of that, it has always stuck with me. I just think it's a beautiful and inspiring book of love.
I love that book, but I resented it for a while. Here's why. On Fire, a book written by your new friend, John O'Leary, was the #1 book in the nation, week after week after week. And then some doctor wrote this book That quickly knocked O'Leary back down to real life. And I read that Jerk's book and was immediately floored by his life, the wisdom, his wife. I mean, it's a beautiful story. So worthy. What's one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a little girl growing up first in New York, eventually North Carolina, that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today?
Not caring what people thought. There was a time I just didn't. I couldn't. And I wish, I wish. But yeah, not caring what people thought.
I think we have that till like 12.
Yeah.
And then we get it again at about 80.
Yes.
And thank God.
Yes.
Like now our job really is like, let's live it a little longer than 12 and bring it back before 80. And if we keep doing that.
And I say that like, after Cheslie passed, and I mentioned in the book, one of the most difficult emotions for me to find was joy. I didn't think I would ever find joy again, which is not the same as happiness. And I do remember a period when I wrestled with even laughing. There was a guilt that I felt just to laugh. Like I should not find humor in anything. I was afraid if I laughed in public. Was afraid of what people would think. And I remember my best friend came over to talk with me, and we had a very open conversation about the importance of feeling what you feel. And she said, if you feel like laughing, you just laugh out loud. You throw your head back, you laugh out loud. And that was what I needed.
I'm glad you have a friend like that.
Yeah.
If your home caught fire, this is question number 3, and all living people are out, you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item. What's the one physical thing you come racing back outside with?
Cheslie scrapbooks. Yeah. They are truly a gift. To see where she has written her thoughts during incredible moments, private moments, simple moments. It's irreplaceable. Her scrapbook.
You could sit on a bench on a gorgeous New York or Charlotte or St. Louis day and have a long conversation with anyone living or dead. Who would you like to be seated next to?
I talk to Cheslie all the time now, so I'm going to say my grandmother. She is the woman who introduced me to the art. I loved her dearly. And I don't feel like I got enough stories from her about life and overcoming, survival. She also had 6 children. I look up to her so much, and I feel like I lost her before I could really appreciate her.
What's the best advice Grandma or anyone else ever gave you? So the best advice you've ever received is?
Be yourself. That was something that my grandma encouraged me to do when I was younger. I mentioned that I was a tomboy growing up. That went against the grain when it was time to go to church, and I had to put on the black patent leather shoes with the little frilly socks and the dress, and I hated it. Honestly, I hated it. And I had to be something I wasn't, when really I just wanted to wear my comfortable clothes. All of the women, this is something that my grandmother reminded me of many times, all of the women in my family were debutantes. I was the first woman in my family when I turned 16 who did not become a debutante. It just really didn't fit in with who I was, quite frankly, as a tomboy. My grandmother never let me forget that until I was older, and when we talked about it, and I told her, I'm a tomboy, and she encouraged me, just be yourself then. And I think about that a lot. Yeah, just be yourself.
What would you tell yourself at age 20?
Your children are always watching. When I was 20, I was married. When I was 21, I had my first child. And I mentioned I didn't plan to be a mother, but I became a mother and fell in love with it. And one thing I share often with parents is that your children are always watching you. They watch how you handle your mental health. They watch what you do when you're tired. They watch what you do when you need support and turn it away. They watch you wear a mask to try to get people to think everything's fine when it's not. Your children know what is going on. They are watching you. I often encourage parents, talk out loud, say the words about your mental health and what you are doing to support your mental health. Mommy's going for a spa day. This is my self-care. I need that today. Dads, I'm going to spend some time with my friends. They energize me and it helps my mental health. Say those words because your children are watching you.
You've run the gauntlet, gone through 6 questions. We have one final question. Question number 7,
Okay.
April Simpkins. It has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
She gave all she had for the betterment of others.
Well, now we know where Cheslie learned it. She gave all she had for the betterment of others. I want to thank you for giving truly all you had. Many of us, myself maybe included, would stay at home with the drapes drawn. And you draw them back, you step into that light, and you bring it into a world that is longing for it. So thank you for giving your heart to others. We need it. I needed it today, and I'm grateful for you.
Thank you.
My friends, that is the great April Simpkins. My name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift it is. Don't blink and live inspired.
Well, my friends, I had the pleasure of sitting across the table in our boardroom with April Simpkins. What a special opportunity to see the joy that came to this mother's face every single time she talked about her beloved daughter, Cheslie, Miss USA 2019. Here's a woman who seemed to have everything and yet struggled mightily in everything. So here it comes. If you or anyone you know, anyone you care for, anyone you love might be struggling, please know that the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is always available 24/7 at 1-800-273-8255. Or you can text HOME, HOME, to 741-741. If you want to continue this important conversation, we have an entire playlist dedicated to suicide awareness and prevention. You can hear important life-saving conversations from experts, survivors, and those left behind to help others care for ourselves that we loved. You can find the Suicide Awareness and Prevention playlist at johnolearyinspires.com. My friends, I want to thank you for tuning into this important, life-giving conversation with my friend April. I want to thank you for being part of our Live Inspired podcast family. And I want to remind you of this truth. Please hear these words. In spite of the headwind you face, the challenges you're in the midst of, you are not alone. The foundation is firm, and the best is yet to come. So for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift. Live inspired.